This is Twit.
Move fast and break things is, it's easier to ask forgiveness than ask permission. Just go ahead and do it, and then we'll apologize afterwards.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's their operating model.
I love that they got rid of that slogan.
They did change it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not as funny anymore.
Do you think they got rid of it because it was impolitic to say that, or because they really don't believe it? I feel like they still do it.
It was, I forget the exact timing, but Facebook was in the headlines for literally breaking some things, I don't know, democracy, something. And so they announced that we're going to change it to something more, I don't know, something less catchy because nobody remembers the new motto.
Yeah, I don't remember it. I remember the old one. That really is the fundamental question that I'm really trying to get to, which is, does social media break democracy?
I think it does. There's a quote by my favorite author, Neil Stephenson, basically saying social media is the doomsday machine. I have unfortunately come to believe that is true.
Well, you've been the victim. Of course, you were the victim of Gamergate. I mean, social media has been weaponized against you.
It has, but it's wider than that. I mean, what happened to me during Gamergate was, 5-6 years ago? Life moves on. What I see it doing to my country right now, it's really hard to argue that the discourse in the United States in the last, especially 4 years, has gotten really terrifyingly toxic.
And I'm sure there are other reasons for it.
Sure.
But it does feel like the algorithms of both Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, got to include YouTube in this, are designed to move the conversation in a more polarized, more extreme direction. They're outrage engines.
Yeah. This ties into a lot of my work. I am of the opinion of issues like Medicare for all. I think we need to look at universal health care. But there is a weaponization of a certain portion of the electorate where it's a grievance engine, right? And it tells you that if you don't get this one policy, then the solution is to sit it out and wait for maximalist policies. We're seeing that more and more with the left in a way I've never seen in my whole lifetime. I am really worried about that conversation.
And yet, I hate the phrase Overton window, but it is the right phrase for this. The Overton window is the kind of the range of policies that are kind of within the natural discourse. Like, that's not too far out of range. It's in the window, the Overton window. I feel like the Overton window has been moved and broadened by the discourse that's happening on social media. Yes?
Definitely. Yeah. In a good way. I mean, look at issues.
So there's benefits too.
Yeah. There are benefits. I mean, if you're moving towards policies you agree with, I think, unfortunately.
Well, Medicare for all, for instance, was a non-starter 10 years ago.
Absolutely. But also look at the conversation we're having of white supremacy today.
It was also a non-starter 10 years ago. You're right.
Right. I grew up in Mississippi in the 90s, and I see more statements justifying what is going on today than I did there. Yeah. And it really terrifies me. Yeah.
Sorry, were you trying to say something, Shira?
Oh, well, the social dilemma on Netflix.
No, that's okay. Let's talk about that.
Definitely touches on that. And the fact is, they want to keep you on the platform, so they're going to feed you what they think you want to hear more of or know more about. And so you get into this deep rabbit hole around things that might not be right. And even if it's misinformation, it's still something that will keep you on the platform. And that's where the ethical nature of it and moral nature of what they're allowing to be on these platforms comes in.
It all sort of glances over the people actually making and spreading this information and gaming the systems. It's not like Facebook put up any misinformation itself. It's it's my least favorite phrase, bad actors.
Yeah, but you're right. Yeah, so in fact, some of the people in the chat room are saying it's people. People are the problem. But the problem is people have been given a tool, a megaphone, an amplifier they didn't have before. So I don't think people are worse than they were, but these
people
networks
were always like that, thinking these things, but it empowers them and grows. It's like the water to the seed, right? It's all intertwined to grow this.
So what do we do?
Hate or anger and frustration.
Do we shut it down? No.
No, I just think that we need, I don't know, like regulations. Like, I think that it was a bit extreme. You know, the New York Post article about Hunter Biden,
which was blocked on all social media. Even Fox, by the way, apparently was offered the story, and they said, that smells a little bit. We're not going to do that. But the Post went ahead with it. Rupert Murdoch, being what he is, went ahead with it. And then Twitter blocked it. You couldn't retweet it. But you're saying that had the negative impact on how this spread.
Yeah, it fueled the fire that all these platforms are starting to censor Black Mirror style. And I think there's a way to be responsible and accountable and not feeding into that. Like, I do think they could have said this hasn't been verified, or this.
I think that's what they ended up doing, didn't they?
Yeah, well, that's like, and because they wanted to use this as an example, this became that. And I don't think it was the right timing for that example, because it just became a story that the left and the media are continuing to censor this side. If this happened to Biden, or like they would have, or if it was the other way around, then they wouldn't have censored it. And so I don't know. I feel like there's some issues there. But Heather, I'd be interested to hear what.
Yeah,
Heather,
I mean, the Washington Post has done such a good job, I think, of walking the line of covering this stuff. It's very difficult, and to not look partisan, but at the same time, to also not do the two sides reporting. It's difficult to do.
It's easier because, I mean, I came from like CNN, where there's a much faster pace, and at Washington Post there's, more incentive to go slow and get it right. But what I thought was interesting with this particular story is it ended up being a platform story more than it was about Hunter Biden, which was not the intention at all. And so we're all writing like 2,000-word think pieces about Twitter's policy, and Rudy Giuliani is like, no, that's not the plan.
Yeah, that wasn't what you were supposed to be focused on.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Maybe then it actually was a good decision.
Yeah.
But, who knows?
It was interesting in the debate on Thursday to watch the president bring it up as if everybody knew the story, in almost a shorthand way. And all the commentators and all the networks said, yeah, nobody knew what he was talking about because it had been somewhat suppressed. So maybe it did have a salutary effect. I don't know, salutary.
And I read some other commentary that was along the lines of people aren't supposed to know the details of the story exactly. They're just sort of supposed to get this general impression that wrongdoing happened, and so
that's all it
like
needs.
That's the confusion.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a different opinion here because I'm on the show with 3 journalists. I'm not a journalist. I have a different opinion. I used to believe this 5-10 years ago. I would 100% be there with you. I have come to the conclusion that we can't be information idealists, and I think we need to be information realists about the way misinformation spreads, because we can really see this is pushing our democracy to the brink. And I think the Republic is going to be just fine if social media companies like Twitter take a harder line on flat-out disinformation. I think it's going to be just fine. We knew this was going to happen. And also the fact that, Russian disinformation certainly seems to be indicated in this. I also think there's a national security argument for this. So I have grown increasingly comfortable with this. What I think we should do is, I think the answer is I think Facebook is so large that if you don't like their policies, it's very hard to go somewhere else. So I think that breaking up the Facebook monopoly, and then if you like Twitter's policies or you like Facebook's policies, you can go there. You can enjoy that. Or you can go to something like Gab, which maybe the policies are a better fit for you. But I think ultimately, that choice is going to be fine.
Yeah.